Well, hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Bomb City Podcast. My name is Nick. If this is your first episode, thanks for joining us, and if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. This episode is a ton of fun. I'll get right into it. This is my interview with Bruce Gossett, the incredibly talented artist, hot rodder, and screen printer from up in West Sacramento. We got along great. This was my first time meeting him the day of this interview, and man, it was so much fun to record. So here it is, episode 11 of the Bomb City Podcast, Bruce Gossett. Thanks so much for listening.
Are we recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the full story is, dude, is I got into art to get away from cars.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. I grew up around automobiles. My stepfather is a used car dealer.
Yeah.
And when I was a child, he always had different lots. Over here on, off of Fulton Avenue. If you're in the Sacramento region, you know about Fulton Avenue. That used to be where all the dealerships were. And he always had small used car lots. But back then, in the 70s and 80s, it was the end of the freewheeling years of car dealers.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game now. CarMax and all that shit's totally changed the game. But back then it was pretty crazy, man, and it was rad as shit as a child. Every night he came home with a different fucking car.
That's awesome.
He had a thing for like Porsches, slantbacks, Targets, shit like that. And I till this day, I have an appreciation of those. But like he'd come home and he'd have Smoking the Bandit's fucking car, or like the next day, what I really liked is when he brought home the Vans.
Yeah. The
Vans, I fucking loved Vans back then, dude. I mean, and you name it, man. All the shag, all the fucking side pipes, you name it. And so, when I was a kid, I'd go detail cars at his lots and shit. Yeah. And that's how I actually got my first car, is he nabbed a 72 Chevelle at the auction block. And back then what they used to do is they pull plug wires before they ran through the block, so it sounded like the fucking motor was missing. And he'd get a car for, I think he got that 72 Chevelle. It was an old grandma one owner. 72 Chevelle for, I think he got it for like $150, $200. Uh-huh. Which nowadays, those were actually really desirable cars. They became popular in the last 10, 15 years or whatever. But I think back now, that was probably, probably about 86, 85, 86. And I giggle back now because it wasn't that old. That car wasn't that old. I didn't think about that back then. It's a pretty cherry one-owner grandma car. Yeah. But anyway, I paid for that with him by detailing cars and shit. Awesome. And I remember the first week or two, his lot was around the corner from Tognotti's Auto World, which is still there to this day. And this is before I had my driver's license. I was 15. Yeah. Immediately took it over there and had tires, and we tracked down the rally wheels, and so then I went over there and had the tires put on. And I remember them thinking that there was going to be a fitment problem because I wanted these bigger tires in the back. And I'm like, well, I'll roll the inside fender lip. With that help? He's like, well, yeah. So I did that the night before, and then we took it in, everything fit up good. But before I had my license, I wanted to fucking modify shit. And I think that came from like skateboarding and BMX and stuff like that, where you tricked your shit out. You personalized stuff. So I was intuitive to do it with the car thing. So anyway, the 72 Chevelle was my first car, and cut my teeth on modifying that. And I remember saving up to get my first intake manifold, and I got it from Speed Shops over on fucking Watt Avenue, I believe is where they were at the time. But I remember saving up to go get an Ella Brock intake, and it was like, I remember when I got it, dude, taking it out of the box, it was just fascinating to me. And I remember when I swapped the manifold in my parents' driveway, and all my friends were playing football that day down at the park, and I chose to fucking, they didn't understand, what the fuck you fucking doing with the car? And I spent the day changing them I was a pig in mud, you know what I mean? But again, that was a weird time too. That was the 80s. There was smog. That was the beginning. I had a 72 Chevelle, so that was the beginning years of smog shit. So, man, you always had to deal with smog. And, that shit was a nightmare. People don't understand this nowadays. But back then, I mean, there were kink smogs going on, shops that were doing, sticking the sniffer. Back then, you put the sniffer in a tailpipe, and they would stick them in a dummy car to pass, and they were doing kink smogs.
Yeah.
Well, that was there were dudes getting 5-10 years in fucking prison for doing that. It was fucking ugly. I remember it scaring the shit out of me because you never know if you were going to get caught in a sting or something. But like we'd modify our cars, and they wouldn't pass visuals, so you'd have to go to a shop after hours that wouldn't pop the hood, and it was like, man, that shit struck fear in me, man. I don't know, it was fucked up. But since then, I mean, like they've laxed out here on that kind of stuff. I mean, I think technically, your later 70s vehicles are still not supposed to be visually altered and shit. I'm not, I don't own anything that, I mean, like as far as like the cars I like or pre that, but there was a dark period there in the 80s. It was fucking gnarly, man. Yeah. It was a weird thing, but anyway, getting back to like the beginnings, I just always was around cars. Always dug them. But I don't know. I didn't see any connection between art and cars and shit like that. I didn't really. An art was an abstract term to me. I didn't really understand that when I was younger. I look back now and realized I used to draw. Like I remember I used to do lightning bolts on my skateboard. We'd have to make our own skateboard. We'd have to cut them out and shit. It was like clay wheel shit. You know what I mean? I remember when urethane came out and them fucking Cadillac wheels, and you'd go into the skateboard shop and they'd have a rack, the glass counter, and they'd all be full of those new urethane wheels, and it was like lifesavers. It was like candy, dude. It was so fucking rad. But I used to, customize my skateboard and shit. And I remember I'd go up to Thrifty's and get a 10-cent fucking ice cream cone and then hang out in the aisles and try to pocket as much Tester's paint as I could. And then I'd go home and I'd paint these lightning bolts on these skateboards. And I didn't think anything. It's actually something I thought about recently that made the connection that I guess I was kind of always doing stuff like that. Or I'd had a half pipe in the backyard. Yeah. So I drew up plans for that. So I guess I always had a proclivity to drawing, but I just didn't. In my household, wasn't exposed that, oh, by the way, you can make a living doing art. There's people out there that, there's an industries for the, I just was never presented with that. It was a real blue collar, meat potatoes kind of upbringing. And in fact, toward the end of high school, I was doing ROP for drafting. And I enjoyed that, but it was right about the time that CAD was coming in, the computer-aided drafting, and it left me cold. It was clear I had a thing for working with my hands and whatnot, so that didn't fucking work out. But
and that early CAD program stuff, I used to play around with those when I was a kid. It's so awful.
Oh, it was so primitive.
Yeah. I think my friend had something called Turtle CAD, where it was like a little arrow, and you give it commands and it moves. Mm-hmm. So you're like programming shapes. It was...
Yeah, it was like I connect it with like Atari video games and shit. It was just really crude, and
it was bad.
And it was, again, I got into that right at that threshold of where it was transitioning. So I was actually doing ROP for the it was Bureau of Land Management or whatever. Over off Cottage Boulevard, but I actually, they placed me in an actual functioning business. It was, so I had my own desk and my own Leroy set, which was for lettering and shit, and I had access to the blue lines for doing blueprints and shit like that. And I really liked that aspect of it. It reminded me of like Brady Bunch, and like, the dad was an architect or whatever, and so he had that drafting table, and that registered with me for some reason. I don't know, but anyway, the funny thing about all that is I. When I was around cars, coming of age in the 80s, all the car interaction I ever had was with muscle car guys. Yeah. And which was what was the thing at that time, at least in my universe. And I guess that whole thing just left me cold. I don't know, the numbers matching, fucking this, that, and the other thing. And then the whole other extreme of like 80s pastel graphics and, you know, tubbed wheel wells and all that shit. And I don't know, man. It wasn't I always felt like I was out of step.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I didn't know, I mean, I knew about Roth and stuff, and I mean, that stuff appealed to me aesthetically, but I didn't realize there were car guys out there that were like thinkers and like weird. And like
back then, were you learning about Roth more through like the model cars, or
probably model cars and like maybe the occasional pop up in like a magazine or something because he was at some event and there was coverage or whatever.
Just not putting it together that there were people doing this.
Yeah, I didn't make the connection. It just was just outside of my sphere, but I was just around cars, whatever. So I start getting into. We'll skip over this real quick, but I tried getting into stand-up comedy. At one time, I still to this day love watching stand-up comedy.
When was this?
This was probably 86, 87,
so that's like
88.
Right at the beginning of the boom, right? When clubs started popping up and...
Yeah. No, totally. And I tried my hand at you know, I was writing stand-up material, whatever, in my feeble attempt at that kind of shit. And I did an open mic, and I figured out real quick that I had stage fright. Oh. And since then I had come to understand that most anybody that does that deals with that, and you have to work through it. Well, I chose not to work through it. It was just like, I was just scared shitless. Yeah. You know what I mean? I got through a set, and it was horrible and whatever.
Do you still remember any of your jokes?
Yeah, I remember doing a lot of jokes about like Jim Morrison of the Doors and shit like that. I just did stupid stuff. I was like, you know, I mean, I got to be honest with you. During that period, that was towards the beginning of. I used to enjoy doing a lot of psychedelia and stuff. I like mind altering stuff at that time, and I kind of considered myself a feral cat at that period. You know what I mean? I was pretty wild, or at least thought I was in comparison with other people, but whatever. But I don't know. I didn't feel that wasn't my calling. I'm like, man, this ain't for me. Fucking. And I don't know what it was. It was a off the cuff thing. I was already out of high school or whatever, and I ended up taking a couple art classes over at this city college, and albeit all the subject matter and the content in which it was in was fucking mind-numbingly boring to me. I don't know. I kind of took an aptitude to drawing, and this, and I kind of liked it. So I switched to a different city college, started doing more, and then I applied to CCAC out of Oakland, and I was on my way of doing that, or to move there and shit, and I was dating my current girlfriend at the time, so I don't know. I was at one of those decisions, and I decided that I was going to live with my girl because I really liked her, and I didn't want to give up that relationship because I knew moving away would have killed that. And then on top of that, I was like, I had my misgivings about school. I was like, it seemed like I was already starting to gravitate towards underground art. By then, I had already acquired. There's two books that were seminal during that period. I had acquired the Alex Gray book. He does. I guess they used his shit like Beastie Boys used some of his imagery. Right. He does a lot of the metaphysical body. It was mind bending to me at the time. I mean, it's not necessarily something I was drawn to as far as visually. Like I wanted to have that hanging on my wall. It was more like there was some dude that sat down and fucking painted this. It was a painted image. It was very intriguing to me. And the second one was Williams' first book, The Lowbrow Art of Robert Williams, and that fucked me up. Yeah. That completely. I was very intrigued by that and really started digging after that. And that was towards the end of the 80s. And I always cite that I started in 89, and that's pretty close. It was, maybe a little earlier, 87, 80, I don't know. But by about 89, it was starting to be on it was on at that point. I was starting to connect the dots.
Did you zero in on what you liked about Robert Williams stuff? Like what about it?
Well, first of all, out of the gate, it wasn't necessarily car shit.
Yeah.
Oddly enough. It was just, aside from the overall aesthetics of it and the mind-bending aesthetic. You're just trying to figure out how someone would draw something like that, and and then ink it up and stuff. It was the way he did it.
Yeah.
And it's to this day. I mean, I can't shake that influence. And there was a point a few years ago where I just gave up. I'm like, fuck, I don't care. I really like that aesthetic. Yeah. And you do research and you figure out where some of that shit, I could point to some sources and references that, probably influenced him. But then there was a whole other group of artists, they're kind of working alongside him that were, like Newton, that was, some people don't know, this audience who's listening will know that he was the guy that was illustrating Ross shit, but like, fucking Newton, dude, is like God to me. He's like, the fucking way he rendered the car is in the smoke, and he's still around as far as I know. And but like, it was just unbeatable. Yeah. And there's like you get doing this stuff after a while, and you get real like opinionated about, that's not right. Or there's some stuff that just resonates with you the way it's done, and like Newton was the king, and Williams, albeit he'll negate the fact that he's even involved in a rotten custom world anymore, which always cracks me up, and he will point out that it's been 30, 40 years since I've done a car rendering or whatever, and he's still...
Yeah, but it's still out there.
He's still the king in that world, you know what I mean? And he's dumbfounded by it, but... my view was, there was a point where it's like, I want to be so bold as to try to pick up where he left off, because he kind of stopped in the 70s.
Yeah.
The car stuff, his imagery, he did a few things in the 80s when he was doing like the zombie mystery paintings. He did like snuff ink and but for the most part he just stepped away from rendering the automobile, and but I always loved the way he did it.
Yeah.
And so I'd always considered that, that's the fucking benchmark. That's that's what I need to pursue. But anyway, so here's the deal. I got into art to kind of get away from cars, because I was that meathead mentality and these street these street machine guys, muscle car guys. It just wasn't appealing to my sensibilities or whatever. So I kind of get into art to get away from that. And then a buddy who off and on he was living in San Francisco, but his name was and he's out there. I know he's not really in the scene anymore, but he don't know, he might hear this, but his name is Jefferson Howery. Okay. He goes by Jake. He's a really instrumental guy. He was working for Tower, because Tower's corporate headquarters were here in West Sac. Oh. So he did a lot of sign stuff for them. He worked at the fucking sign shop at the corporate place, and I forget who introduced us. Susie and I forget her boyfriend's name. They introduced us to Jake, and I immediately hit it off with Jake. He was into airbrushing. He was doing all this visual shit. He was into cars, and he's the one who kind of started enlightening me to the fact that there were guys out there that were fucking hip on this car shit, but they were also hip. They were hip to the music and fucking this, that, and the other thing. And it was very eye-opening for me. He's the guy that introduced me to David Perry. Wow. And David Perry's the one, it was like, he connected all the dots for me. Awesome. He was a really, really important figure with me. And then I was really close friends with him. I really dug interacting with David, because he was like, he just had a really cool perspective on things. And he was a thinking guy. Yeah. He was an intelligent outlook on things. It was different from the general meathead car mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I never met him before, but hearing you describe him like that is sort of the way that most people describe how his photography is different, because it's just a slightly different angle.
Well, it's from his perspective, yeah. And he has a very interesting past. Like, he was a musician, and his set of influences. And I remember, I forget when, after Hot Rod had come out, his book, I'm pretty certain he told me that entire soundtrack to him for making that book, as far as editing and composing it, was Tom Waits. You know what I mean? And that totally was rad to me. It was when it was totally outside of what you would normally, and I spent a lot of time with Dave, and we listened to a lot of Tom Waits, and I could totally see I can see it in looking at the book. You know what I mean? But I mean, he was, he had cool thoughts. He was a thinking man. You know what I mean? He is a thinking man. You know what I mean? And then he did, Border Town with Barry Gifford and Barry Gifford's writing and shit, and and it has overtones of beat speak, and and that it appealed to me. Yeah. Beatniks have always appealed to me. Sure, the Jack Kerouac shit on the road, all blah blah blah, but I don't know, I like the Hollywood version of it,
the Maynard Krebs version.
Yeah, no clapping, it's just all finger snaps. You know what I mean? I don't know. That always appealed to me, and David was a beatnik. Yeah. Like a real beatnik. You know what I mean? But anyway, he's the dude that really gelled everything for me. And I didn't really, as far as art, I didn't really attempt to do any renderings as far as car stuff before then. And then Jake and David Perry, those guys got me juiced on this car thing again. And I kind of kept my eyes out, and I'd always still kept mechanically minded during the off time there. But I came across a 54 Plymouth, two-door Post. It was a Post car, and I fucking nabbed that and started modifying it. And again, I getting around this new breed of car guy. They were connecting the dots with me it's Frankenstein shit, dude. Cars don't care that it's not of the same make or whatever. You can stuff whatever you want into whatever, and if the shit'll hook up and fucking this, that, and the other thing, it can function. Right. And that was just an enlightening thing to me. You know what I mean?
That's so different from the muscle car world where things are numbers matching.
Oh, yeah. No, that was, an atrocity to them to think like that. And to me, it was liberating. I was this is fucking ready. I mean, I could stick a Chevy in this Ford and fucking put these fucking, really? And it was, and I had a lot of mechanic buddies, older gentlemen that I befriended, and, it was old hats to them. They were like, oh, fuck, you're on the third time around here, kid, fucking. But, and they instilled in me, yeah, dude, car parts don't know fucking, they're not supposed to go together. You can make anything work together if you put enough time into it. Yeah. So I think that was my, aha moment of fuck. So, I mean, I had fun modifying that Plymouth, and eventually I tried blowing up the flat six, and I ran the flat six for a long time. I love flat sixes, dude. Yeah. They're fucking a great sounding motor. They're often derided as a fucking tractor motor, or for a generator or whatever, but they got a nice sound to them, and they're fucking indestructible. But I started getting a rod knock in that thing, and it just wasn't going to go away. And I actually, funny thing is I tried blowing the motor up on that car the day we went to Eric Hogan's funeral. Yeah, he was a tattoo guy here in Sacramento, and 3 or 4 of us piled into my Plymouth, and I'm like, fuck this, let's blow this car up on Eric's funeral's day, fuck it, because I knew I was going to put another motor in it, and dude, I had that bitch floored. They were out, that funeral was out in Roseville, and I had that fucking car floored, loaded down with people the whole way there and the whole way back. That fucking motor would not explode. I was bummed. Anyway, I yanked that motor. Not too long after that, I ended up putting in a 273 out of I bought a whole car in pieces just for that motor. It was a 68 Dart GT, which the 68 Dart GT was actually a really desirable car. It was a nice car. It was a 2-door, and it had a fiberglass front clip. It was fucking a nice package. I just wanted the motor. So I got the motor, and I sold off the rest of the carcass for probably way less than I should have, or whatever. What happened was, actually, the reason I went with that V8 is my old man had a set of late model Dodge Dakota headers that were chrome. Mm-hmm. And the later small block headers would fit on the earlier motors. And I'm like, I'm going to fucking figure out a way you can get this motor in there just because of these headers. I just always liked chrome headers, and I just think I would never go out and buy the fucking things because they're expensive. Right. Even then, they were expensive. And I remember I had to do some crazy shit, man. Like there was like the main collector pipe just hit the fucking the steering column, and I didn't want to really get into fucking having to C-notch the frame to fucking move the steering box out. So what I ended up doing was taking that one driver's side header, and I went out to, there's a fucking header shop over out in Rancho. I forget the name of the outfit. It's a well-known outfit. And I took them to this header, and I'm like, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I want to take a potato chip out of this fucking section here, flip it, weld it back up. I go, is that going to pinch the exhaust so much that I'm going to be fucking up this fucking flow? And he's like, are you taking this to the drag strip? And I go, no, dude, it's my fucking daily fucking blah, blah, blah. And he's like, knock yourself out, dude. So I wasn't the best at welding at that time, so I had a buddy come out, and I cut it apart and flipped that chip, and he tigged it up for me, and it fucking worked rad, dude. And actually I ended up working as like a torque strap, because it was kind of a potato chip in this header pipe, and that steering column went right through it, through the edge of it. Well, if you fucking stood on it, that motor would come up and lock into that. So you'd almost feel the wheel twitch when you fucking nail it. It was a really fun car, but I flaked the firewall and tricked it all out and shit. And in fact, I liked it so much I never put the hood back on it, because I just like driving it without the hood. And actually to this day I like seeing customs that have, sometimes they look good with the hood off, particularly 50s cars, but to me. But that car is actually still floating around. It floated around to a handful of friends. Man, it ended up down in the Central Valley. I think at one point it almost ended up in Canada. I seen it not too long ago at like Autorama or some shit out in the parking lot. And to this day, it looks pretty much like it did when I had it. A few things have been changed, but no one's ever touched that engine bay. Yeah, it's all done the way I had done it. It's fucking, I'm pretty sure it's probably still that way to this day. It's pretty rad. It was pretty neat to see that no one had kind of messed with that. But anyway, I ended up selling that car to buy this truck, the 40 Chevy. And it was just an opportunity. I didn't think I'd get a chance to do, these things weren't getting any cheaper. Yeah. I could unload that car and kind of pony up a little more money and get this. It was a well done, meat and potatoes part of it had been done. And I wasn't going to be able to get it any cheaper than that anytime soon. So I jumped at it. And I'm glad I did, because they've become really popular. But I'd always wanted a pre-war car. And I like that deco and the pontoon fenders. And it's been a really fun truck. But it was tough to sell that Plymouth, dude. And a couple times I almost bought it back really cheap, because the guys that had it let it go to pot. At the time or whatever, but there's only so much space. So anyway, that's where we're at now. Yeah. But the car thing, it took a while for me to start drawing cars and applying the art stuff to that, and it was a fucking learning curve to me. It just took a really long time. I think drawing cars is difficult. Yeah. And it took a while for it to click. I don't think I'm all that good, frankly. But I do remember there was a point where things started clicking. Like, I think I understand now the language of rendering an automobile. And I've said this before in interviews, that I think there is this connection to me in the approach of rendering mechanical stuff and automobiles and stuff, and rendering the female form in a similar aspect that it's like less is more. And it's a really delicate thing. The slightest deviation and twitch can fuck everything all up. I think there's a similarity there, but to me an automobile it's a really delicate thing to render. It's an odd thing, and it took a long time to fucking figure that out. It doesn't hurt to be a mechanical dude and like understand cars somewhat and like
understand why things are the way they are.
Correct. Yeah. And there was a learning curve there. Like, you know, I wasn't as hip on the pre-war shit when I was first starting, like dropped axles and like, you know, fucking hairpins and fucking this side. You know, there's stuff that's mechanical. That serves a purpose, and if it's fucked up in any way, you can spot it immediately. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of that learning curve there, but like, yeah, I don't know. The other thing is, dude, is I really like old cars. I really like driving them, owning them, working on them. I always have. I think I always will. You know?
Yeah. This truck was your daily for a while, right?
Oh God, yeah. No, totally. I had that, and I had a 65 Plymouth Fury, and I'd go back and forth between the two. You know, some I'd be driving only one of them, you know, for months on end, and I'd switch to the other one or whatever. And in that 54 Plymouth, when I had that 54 Plymouth, that's the only car I had. Yeah. So it was, you know. You name it, every scenario you can think of, I'd been with it, you know what I mean? When I first got it, it was still the 6-volt setup and, you know, a few stranded parking lots with that fucking deal. I fucking switched that in a heartbeat. There's guys out there that are really into that 6-volt thing, and I knew about the 612 fucking hybrid shit, but I'm just like, you know what, man, I'm driving this shit. I'm just fucking, I want it modern. If I get low battery, I can jump it, you know, it's just... There's a lot of things you don't think about. That's some antiquated shit. A fucking 6-volt. And then like the positive ground. Yeah. Positive ground 6-volt. Who the fuck thought of that? I don't just weird shit. But yeah, I don't know. It's the car thing is that's a weird thing. You get it in your blood, and I don't think you can get it out, you know? Yeah. Modifying shit and stuff, and like knowing that you can do those modifications and still drive it, and it's still a functional thing. And I like that. I like that aspect of it. And frankly, I don't know. You know, I don't know how much longer we're going to have of that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't. You know, I mean, I imagine we'll always still have these vehicles. I mean, does it end up being just a parade car, and you get special tags to where you can drive it on the weekends to fucking showboat around, or does it get to a point where we're going to be pulling drivetrains out and putting electric motors in these things? I don't, you know, and that's being done now. I mean, there's, you know,
we could be living in a golden age and not really realize it.
Well, and I think about these things because I think the writing's on the wall with this gasoline shit, man. You know what I mean? And I'm fucking, trust me, I got to run it through my veins. But you gotta observe these things. I mean, how far can we go with this? I don't know, but we're fortunate out here in California, man. We got a lot of cool cars, and we can still drive them. Yeah, still drive them. And
for as much shit as we have to deal with living in the state of California, thank God we don't have vehicle inspections.
Oh my God, yeah,
that would kill so many.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that's that kind of shit. It harkens me back. It takes me back in the headspace of like the smogging stuff in the '80s. Yeah. It's like it just sends chills up to my spine. I don't want to have to fucking talk to some official and quantify, you know, stuff on a vehicle, and especially when they're looking for turn signals and hazard lights, and you're just like fucking yawning. You're like, yeah, whatever, man. You know what I mean? And I mean, in the state of California, you know, hand signals are still legal. Right. And I've been pulled over in these old things, and like, well, I didn't see a signal back there. And I go, well, no, I did a hand signal. And, you know, and the cop will cock his head like, and I'm like, I think it's still legal, correct? I'm pretty sure. Well, yeah, but, you know, they frown upon it, but it is. It's still, you can still legal to operate a vehicle like that. I don't know how it is in other countries. I imagine they have to have turn signals and shit like that. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? I don't know.
I think we made it to where you were painting for Tower. How'd you get from painting for Tower Records to where you're at today?
Well, I got at the Tower, and I was airbrush artist. Some people don't know that at most locations, most retail locations at Tower stores, they had an art department somewhere in that building. And they were the people that, you know, they were foam artists. What I call, you know, they're sign foam or foam core. You know, sheets, 4x8 sheets. The fucking things would come in by the semi, dude. It was fucking rad as shit. You know what I mean? A semi'd show up and you'd be pulling out crates of foam core, all colors.
You guys are just making like displays? Or?
Yeah, basically you'd be doing reproductions of the new albums coming out and shit.
Cool.
You know what I mean? And you know, obviously the reps were coming in and greasing the artist to try to promote. You know, the fuck at the time. You know, I remember like the Pink Floyd's big album or whatever, or was it? I still only have one sign sitting up there. It's X Unclogged. When X Unclogged came out, and like those reps would come in and they'd try to get you to do the biggest display they could squeeze you to do, because it promotes the fucking album or whatever. And it was a rad time. It was the end. It was, you know what, dude? It was the end of the music shit being really rad. You know, and working that environment, because dude, it was crazy, man. Them reps. You know, they come in, hey man, we really want you to, you know, do as big a sign as you can. Like a fucking, can you do a 4x8? Like fucking of this, you know, whatever, Forrest Gump fucking movie, or, you know, it was a real short period. I was only there a year. But like, and I'm like, yeah, man, but you know, you're fighting against this dude over here who fucking wants, and he's all, we'll come out to the car. And they'd open the trunk, dude, and it was a fucking records. It was, I mean, CDs were at the time the thing, and like their whole trunk was CDs, and they're just like, take whatever you want, dude. And I mean, I remember when I started there, I owned like 3 CDs, and when I left, I probably had like 600 or 700, and they'd grease you to promote whatever they needed you to promote. But it was really rad in the fact that I knew I was airbrushing before I worked there, but I learned how to do production airbrush work. So you'd have an album cover you were going to reproduce. You'd get the scale of, you know, whatever fucking foam core, and a lot of times, aside from cutting out the text, you know, try to get that 3-dimensional look and whatnot, we'd airbrush or paint. We'd reproduce the fucking thing big. And I got schooled on how to, you know, line up a color palette and fucking not sit there and like, okay, I'm going to spray red and then sit there and prep the paint. I'm going to do some black. You figured out what the color scheme was, and you had that shit lined up in cups. You know what I mean? It was a fucking production line. And within 2-3 hours, you had a fucking fully realized, you learned production, how to fucking do stuff efficiently, quickly, all that stuff. And it was fucking rad. I was a pig in mud, man. But here's the dark side of Tower. They don't fucking pay shit. And rad as shit to work there. But man, God, it was a lot of top ramen and fucking hot dogs and you name it. But I was learning, and but I saw the writing on the wall. I'm like, man, as much as I love this, I can't make a living doing this. And on top of that, that's when the record industry started going into shitter. Towards, you know, writing was on the wall. It got worse in the late 90s. But you could see it change, and like all the store managers that were rock and rollers with long hair, dudes that looked like Lemmy and shit like that, they were getting squeezed out, and all these corporate dudes were coming in, and like it was changing. You could see it. It wasn't as freewheeling and as fun. You can only imagine what it was like 20 years before then. You know what I mean? Fucking insider coke parties and these fucking, that was crazy shit back then, man. I mean, the movie, you know, the Tower movie just came out, and I mean, I think they probably glossed over a lot of the insanity that was going on during that time frame. But anyway, I was doing a lot of airbrushing. I was doing a lot of stenciling with airbrushing, and then I made the connection that screen printing was probably what I should probably get into. And it took a little while, but I finally got a shop to take me in, and I learned. It was a quick study on that. I figured out real quick that I liked it. I saw the connection with reproducing my art down the road. All of it. I mean, I connected it all. So I'm like, I like this. I could get in. I could sink my teeth into it. So I really got into screen printing. I ran the production at that shop for like 3 years or something. But the guy wouldn't get an automatic, and I was fucking doing these huge runs, man. You'd print like 1,000 shirts and multicolor on dark, and I'd be doing it after 3 or 4 days. My arms were turning rubber, and he thought it was funny, and I'm like, dude, you got to get an automatic, bro. You're killing me here. I was a young guy then, and I'm like, and he just thought it was funny. Well, I started moonlighting at this other shop downtown, and I liked it better. So I ended up going working downtown, and that's where I had been for like 15 years, up till like 2012, 2013. I managed production there, and I had a pretty casual schedule. Like they were really cool about me letting me have my space to do what I was doing, because I was pretty headlong into doing art and whatnot by then. And then right about then is when I started doing Black Cat Press with Ira Cowart, and he's the digital dude, and I was doing all the illustration. And it's about 2001 we started Black Cat Press, and like I was doing that the whole time I was managing that production shop, and it just kind of like I never really conflicted too much. As long as I got what needed to get done there, they were cool with whatever any after hours stuff I was doing, or and I was doing a lot of vending by then, so I wasn't going to be there on Friday because I was going to be vending all week. It was a pretty freewheeling, and then again the screen printing industry's changed a lot since then. It was a lot more freewheeling, man. I mean, it was screen printing was pretty crazy. You know what I mean? Just a lot of characters in that, when I got into it. And, so I just kind of did both. You know what I mean? It didn't seem to be hurting anything. I didn't have to work so hard to fucking make ends meet just doing the art. And I knew right away, years ago that, like, man, it's a tough racket just doing art and making a living. I mean, there's a lot of people I think have delusions of grandeur about this shit. And, I never had that. I knew from right out of the gate. It's like, man, there's a lot of connecting the dots here, and it's your odds are stacked against you, and there's just a lot. So I just approached it as a passion thing and just kind of did it, regardless of if I was making money or not. I just fucking did it. That's awesome. But it came to a point where I was doing it so much where it clicked. I started kind of, I think you can see it in the work, that it like started it just started working. You know what I mean? The aesthetically or whatever. And I still think there's a long way to go, but I think there's a marked change in the work at some point in the early 2000s to me. And I think I had some highlights there in the 90s or whatever, but whatever.
What do you think changed for you that made the art take a little different direction? Was it just a reference, or being exposed to more stuff? Or?
I think exposure's critical. You know what I mean? I mean, I was trying to bounce around as much as I could, and I was a little more aggressive back then, and being on the scene or whatever, or being in the right place. Or I was never super aggressive about that, probably to my own detriment, but regardless, I mean, a lot of stuff in San Francisco, there was a lot of cool things that happened, like the Custom Culture show 1 and 2 that happened. I forget the dude's name to put that on. I'm always horrible with names, but there were big events. I mean, like, I think it was the first one, like Dick Dale was playing, and like they were old hollowed out warehouses, and it was like pop-up thing. This was like 97, 98, some shit like that. And like just massive rooms, multiple rooms. It was crazy, but it celebrated the lowbrow art and the hot rodding, and it was punk rock, and it was just a whole hodgepodge of shit. It was fucking enlightening, and there were some guys, graffiti guys, like I think Mir One was at one of those, and like I got exposed to like what he was doing as far as like how evolved graffiti was coming. And I had always liked graffiti. I never did it, but I always liked the aesthetic of it. So like really seeing his art prints that he was peddling coming up from Southern California really enlightened me, like how vast there was a generation coming up that just really aesthetically driven, and making cool shit. And a lot of these guys were all accessible, dude. It was, you know what I mean? It was, the rock and roll dudes were walking through the show. You need like fucking, holy shit, that's what, and it was just real casual. It was a rad thing. I was really fortunate to kind of have access to that. I mean, and again, like Lavella, and him doing Gearhead, it was a major thing at the time. I mean, it was.
He put it together.
Yeah, and it was. I wasn't the only one that fucking resonated with and appealed to. I mean, I totally got the connection between music and in cars. I mean, I'm way more apt to be listening to fucking Motorhead or I don't know, whatever, while I'm driving in any fucking doo-wop or some shit like that. I grew up around it with my parents. I mean, they loved fucking American Graffiti and doo-wop and shit. And I mean, God, it was like fucking, I'd heard enough of it by the time I'd, moved out on my own and shit. And oh my God, it's still hard to get away from that at the shows nowadays, but
it's funny too, like there are some shows where that hasn't improved, but like members of bands that would be better played through the speakers or walking through the show,
right?
Like, how did we not come to this conclusion earlier? Like, I don't know, you've got like half of Metallica in this room, and they're like wandering through, and like Lucky Seven's got the drummer from Rancid's car in the shop, like they're all showing up to the shows, and we're suffering through whatever they decide to put on the radio.
No, totally.
That has gotten a lot better though lately.
No, they've gotten hip. I mean, obviously we've had a pretty good run of years now where, the new generation has put on shows that are catering obviously to this audience, as opposed to the graybeards and that generation of car guys, I don't know. It's a weird thing for me. It's not reliving some revisionist past or something. That's not what this is about for me, and I don't think it is for a lot of people that are probably listening to this. That it's right now. Right. It's like, you know what I mean? It's a real thing. It's a real. You can go out and go travel all over in this old car. I'm not trying to live some fucking streets of Modesto, fucking doing some cruise night. I don't know, fucking Fonzie, Happy Days, all that shit. And it's not like that, man. It's like, I don't know.
Like I did an interview a couple episodes ago with the guy that does Custom Vanner magazine, and one of the big things that was so awesome from dealing with that guy, and I met him up here at a van show too, so I've been seeing a lot more of that this year. I was real skeptical at the beginning because that's one scene that's easy to buy your way into. Like, you can buy
the van scene.
You can buy a van and be a cool van guy and have done nothing for it.
Well, you could be that in any of this.
Absolutely. And it was just a new trend that I had enough distance between myself and what was going on.
Sure.
Where I had some perspective. But the people that are buying up these vans, they're doing it to do it. And it's not like they're reliving the 70s. No, they want to get in the van and go camping now.
Yeah.
They want to drive across the country to Butler.
Sure. It's rad. I've always loved vans. Vans are rad, dude. And actually, I did some custom painting on a buddy's Econoline. And so I had it for like a week and a half. And so I was driving it every day. I'd get done whatever I was doing to it, and I'd drive it home. I was driving it. And man. It got me all juiced on van. I mean, trust me, I've thought in the last couple months, I've thought about seeking out a van, and because they're fucking rad as shit. My thing about it is, again, it comes back to mechanics. The logistics of yanking a motor on a van just makes my skin crawl, dude. That's the one reason I've never had one yet, because first of all, vans have got neglected for a lot of years. A lot of those things got sidelined, and so a lot of them need mechanical shit, if not a full-on rebuild on the motor. Fucking yanking a motor on a van makes my fucking skin crawl. Yeah. The thought of it just isn't really appealing. But since I drove that one for that period of time, it kind of got me juiced on it, dude. They're like fucking rad as shit, especially when they got a good V8 in front of them and they fucking scoot one of those things. That's fun as shit.
Oh yeah, and they're totally practical. I mean, they can do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Especially get the shorties. They're actually a lot smaller than you'd think. But I used to, there was a lot of derision for a long time about, checkbook hot rodders and guys just buying cars. And I'm not as like hardline on that. I've backed off. I mean, we all had that view for a long time, but there's a point. My thing is this: you can't buy fucking taste.
Right.
And if someone maybe doesn't have the mechanical abilities to build something like that, but is aware enough of how bitchin' a certain car is, and thinks it's so bitchin' that they're gonna fucking buy it, and they actually jump through the hoops of actually buying it, because sometimes that isn't easy either, because these guys are prickly, the guys that want to sell these things, and there are a lot of obstacles involved and whatever. So if you fucking are willing to jump in that arena and pull it off and get that car and blah blah blah, I'm cool with it, man. You know, there are a lot of guys that fuck it up. There are a lot of guys that get a car and they try to customize it and do this and that, and they're just like missing the mark. And it's just
no, you're totally right. That is like completely unfair criticism.
And you know, and it's not, dude, it's not hard and fast. You know as well as I. There's dudes out there. You're like, really, dude? Like, what's going to be next week? A fucking rigid fucking Triumph bobber? I don't, but whatever. I don't, again, I think, and I've met guys down in SoCal, Southern California guys are a little more jaded about these things than we are up here. We're just like fucking whatever. But, you know, these scenes and stuff, they come and go, and I could, frankly, to someone like me, I could give a shit. You know what I mean? I like fucking old cars, and it just means shit's going to be cheaper if it's out of fad. Fucking whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know. Vans. Yeah, dude. That's amazing to me that they've gotten big.
Yeah, it's a lot bigger than I expected. They're everywhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's cool. Yeah. They're fun to paint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Frankly, I'd like to do a whole full on, you know, crazy paint job on one of them fucking things, but I don't know. I'm attracted to that paint style too. I like doing that kind of stuff, but it's really involved, and frankly, I'm not really set up here to do that. But yeah, I don't know. Where were we?
We're talking about vans and people buying in, and we've made it through your story up until somewhat recently.
But yeah, I mean, really a lot of it went back to like. The late 90s and hanging out with David, and him introducing me to a lot of key people, and you know, opening my eyes to a lot of stuff. And there was shit that wasn't car related. Like, I mean, he was doing photo shoots for like Harley Davidson and shit. And I remember he got the Motor Clothes account one year for all the photography for all the big promotional push for all the motor clothes for Harley and whatnot. So he had that whole assignment out in fucking Milwaukee for like, it was like over a week project. And I remember I'm pretty sure it was the first, it might have been the second, but I'm pretty sure it was the first billet proof. And we missed it because we were on that shoot. He took me with him. I was like his grip or whatever, his lighting, you know, cool. With quotes, hand quotes, I was the lighting dude or the grip or whatever. Basically, I was his, support, you know what I mean? Like, you know, a soundboard for aesthetics, if you will. I've always been grateful to him for doing shit like that. It was just so fucking eye-opening. Like doing that, it was pretty crazy. I mean, we're talking shutting down freeways and fucking motorcycles and hanging out the side of windows with cameras and shit. It was just fucking funner than shit, dude. Long days though. I got sympathy for people that are like the movie industry and shit like that. I don't think people realize how grueling those days are, and the hurry up and wait, and you just got to be on set for fucking 18 hours, and it's just
sometimes they don't even shoot.
Yeah, no, it was, and then when we did that, when he did that shoot, it was, those days were like 14, 15 hours. They were fucking grueling, man. And it was like, wake up the next day, do it again. Like, you were in a very fortunate position. It was, you know, there were a lot of dudes that cut their limb off to get that position. You know, I've got to thank photographers out there, but like, man, when you were in it, man, it was grueling. It was great. I mean, you know, but there was a few things like that. David bring me along, like when he went down to Robert and Suzanne's place and shot Suzanne for some magazine. I forget what magazine it was for, but he took me along again, quote unquote, as the lighting tech or the grip or whatever. But
had you met them before?
What's that?
Had you met?
I had met them before that. A couple times in passing. I think once at like Blessing of the Cars, and I forget where else, but that was a pretty game-changing thing for me, because we were at their house and stuff, and I'd always wondered where'd all that artwork come from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, most people would think of looking at that stuff and go, man, it's got to be a deranged mind that does that. Well, Bob was just a dude. He's just a dude. You know what I mean? He's just got some pretty fucking crazy ideas, and he's able to render it exquisitely. But stepping into their place, I was fucking blown away. It was just like, it's just a fucking tract house out in Southern California, the suburbs, and there were fucking those paintings stacked in every wall. Like, just, they were everywhere. It fucking blew my mind. Wow, this is where this is done. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they were real nonchalant, because they're really, Bob and Suzanne are the neatest, for sure. But it was eye-opening to see where that stuff came from, and that it's just a dude that sits down and, applies his craft, and, it's actually, what it comes down to, dude, is just a strong work ethic. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's getting up every day and punching the clock. This isn't like, some people have a lot of delusions of grandeur of what really artists really do, and it's fucking showing up, sitting down in a seat and fucking painting. Yeah. You know what I mean? And constantly, all the time, Yeah, it's a grind for sure. But I mean, it's rad. Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's work, but man, it has its highlights. It's neat. No, a lot of it, I can't emphasize enough how much David Perry helped out and like introduced me and enlightened me the way things operate, how to sidestep ship stuff, that's jive, and, this, that, and the other thing. And, a lot of rock and rollers and whatnot. He just had the Midas touch during that period of that kind of stuff. But, and then he got involved with Garage Magazine and Dan Stoner, and, that magazine opened quite a few doors for sure. And, that whole Jesse James fucking connection and all that shit. But, it was a pretty strong locomotive when it was rolling. You know what I mean? But, I don't know. It's weird. The art thing's cyclical too, dude. I mean, like, I used to show a lot in San Francisco and the gallery and stuff, and I don't show really there too much anymore, because it's, the car art is was out of favor. I think car art's coming back in favor a little bit now in the galleries, but there was about a 10-year period where they're just like, we don't show automotive art, or they just call it lowbrow. We don't show lowbrow, or, you know what I mean? It's weird. People don't realize how cyclical art is, and tastes come and go. And, 1 week, or not 1 week, but 1 year that stuff's hot, but like now it isn't. And, what do you do? Do you stick to your guns, or do you kind of mutate and roll with the punches? I don't know. Yeah. I chose to stick to my guns. Because I like cars. I'm like, fuck it, this shit'll come back around, whatever. Right.
Yeah, people's attitudes towards lowbrow art has changed a lot. I don't know, it'd be like a weird thing to go to a car show these days and see someone walking around with a Shag t-shirt, or,
Right.
It's changed a lot.
Well, Shag was enlightening to me, because we printed for Blessing of the Cars, when Shag did the art in 01, I think it was, something like that. I think it was 01. We screen printed the posters for that. That was my first exposure to a fucking rabid fan base. I was flabbergasted. We printed those, and I'm like, whatever, and then Gabriel and Stephanie got the edition, and I went down there and vended, and they were sold out of those posters within the first hour of the doors, the gates opening to that place. And then I happen to have a couple scraggler artist proofs at my booth that I had towards the end of the day kind of pulled out, and motherfuckers were offering me twice of what they were paying for the good ones, because that was my first exposure of motherfuckers real scrambling to acquire that stuff, and it was like, Jesus Christ,
that's crazy.
Fuck. But yeah, and Shag's done really well for himself. He's got that second store he just opened in Palm Springs or some shit, or I can't remember.
It's crazy.
And he's got stuff with Disney, and man, if you get in Disney stores, you're doing something right. Even Disney's fucking paying attention to this stuff. You know what I mean? That says something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, what else you got, man? Hit me.
I did want to ask about the Gap tool. That was kind of cool, and we were talking about like how neat tangible goods are in general.
Right.
How'd that come about?
Well, I did a painting that actually was for a group show that Dan Collins put on when he had that tattoo shop down in, I forget what the name of it. God damn it. I hate when my memory goes. It might hit me here in a minute, but he put on a group show called Hate the Living back in like 04, 05, some shit like that. I can't remember. I did this painting. It had this rendering. It was like a giant Frankenstein spark plug thing, but it had this gapper as like a, send in to proof of purchase kind of thing and get this plug gapper. It was a joke. It was in the painting though. And more than a couple of people had said, you got to make that fucking keychain. And at the time, that was when, the Iron Cross and Jesse James was blowing up. And I'm like, I better make this before somebody else does. And that was it. It was just like kind of a joke. You know what I mean? I better just make it, just to do it. And like, it actually took a while. It was, they were manufactured over in China at the time. And, I had to do scale drawings and, kind of get into that drafting mode again of like, it had to be technical. Yeah. And here's the deal is they had done a test casting or whatever, and it took forever. It took like a month to get, shit back, so they did they did a test one for me, and they sent it over, and it was all that, it has these 3 gaps. It had the 35, 40, and 45, the most common gaps for spark plugs. And when I got the test pressing back, they were all the same. It wasn't functional. And I couldn't have that. It had to be a functional plug gap or keychain. So I'm like, no, it's off, like fucking blah, blah, blah. And I was discussing with them over the phone where it missed the mark. And so they sent out another tester, and it was the same thing. And I'm like, I got on the phone with them and explained what it was and what I needed. And they're like, yeah, we just don't think we can get what you're talking about. I said, I'll tell you what, if I take this test one and go to my shop and Dremel it to spec, I'll get a plug gapper and spec it. And I go, can I send you that one back and you just cast off of that? And they're all, you can do that? And I go, it'll be at FedEx tomorrow. And I did. I went on that night, went my shop and Dremeled out and spec the gaps on this thing and sent them, and they got it. They got it right. Awesome. So, yeah, I only did 500 of these. I still got a few left. I mean, probably, less than 100, no doubt. A few dozen left of them, but I wanted to do it. It was just one of those things.
Cool. I love stuff like that. Where you have to learn all sorts of new stuff about casting just to make this thing function.
No, totally. It wasn't, and it was never, God, this was never a fucking financial hit whatsoever, dude. But, I like things. I like things that are manufactured and, that serve a function. And it was like something I had to do, and I did it. Fuck it.
We were talking about that earlier by the screen printing thing, how screen printing is the thing that turns your art into a thing. So that whole process is
it's self-contained mass production. You know what I mean? It's that's appealing. In screen printing, you can change inks and runs. So you can do variances that it's experimenting, if you will. That's immediate. You know what I mean? It's like fucking. What would happen if I threw some green in here? Blah, and sometimes you get, again, some happy accidents and some weird effects that you got to do it to get down that Yeah, it's the reproduction of it, reproductive, being self-contained and reproducing your own stuff. That was a massive appeal to me. Yeah. I immediately knew when I got into screen print. I immediately made the connection that this would be really, really cool to be able to control your own reproduction and keep it all in house. You know what I mean? And it's proved true, no doubt. And it's kind of funny to me because screen printing has really exploded in the last few years. Yeah. I found that amusing. Man, we used to joke at the old t-shirt shop, dude. We used to joke that it was when those reality shows were coming on strong. And I always thought they should have done American screen printing or something. And I totally thought, I'm like, dude, this place would be fucking the most hilarious place to do a fucking one of those shows about. Because, man, it was fucking crazy, dude. It makes
sense, because when you think about, when I think of people that I know that do screen printing, yeah, they're all.
Dude. It's central casting, dude. Yeah. No, it's like that. Screen printers, car painters. There's just there's something about it that's they're all kind of the same, dude. Yeah. It's funnier than shit to me. But I mean, some of the scenarios over there that just the weird dealings and it was right now. It's downtown, so there's alleyways and shit. And I mean, there'd be fucking dudes pulling in the alleyway getting tricks done during the middle of the fucking day. You'd see the fucking cars bumping up and down, and we'd go out there and stick our head out there, and you'd see a head bob up from the front seat, and fuck, man. There used to be a vacant lot next to our shop. It was fenced in, but we used to store our derelict cars over there. I had cars over there. The owner had cars there. There was a lot of stuff. And at one point, he had this not running limousine stuck over there. Okay. Well, some entrepreneurial lady of the night figured out that this is a lovely place to conduct business. So there was clearly a whole fucking scene going on there at night when no one was around at the shop. And fuck, it was hilarious, some of the shit we'd find in that car. And some of the shit you just see back there. It was just... we had a crazy time, dude. A lot of funny shit. Yeah. A lot of characters that rolled through there. No, I had often thought that would probably make a good show. Yeah. I'm surprised actually something hasn't come up yet since then. I mean, yeah, maybe they're working on something now. I don't know, but yeah, screen printing's it's a throwback field, dude. There's a lot of elements that still resonate from the 60s and 70s, you know what I mean? That are still taking place now. And there's a whole segment of screen printers that has a really bad reputation with people because they're horrible fucking business people and hard to deal with. And it's kind of a weird, murky industry. It's still stuck in that time frame. So I've heard all kinds of nightmare stories and shit. But for the most part, I mean, we all still want fucking ink smeared on a shirt. So this industry keeps chugging along. But there's certainly a lot of people out there that haven't helped the industry at all, no doubt. Yeah. It's just kind of a weird, they're pirates, man. It's like the pirate aspect of tattooing or whatever. I mean, and that still prevails. Well, that still prevails in screen printing to an extent too. It's kind of a weird, it's like garage rock. I mean, it's a pretty accessible thing. I mean, if you want to get into it, you could set up in your garage and do shit for your band and your buddies, and get in just enough trouble to fuck a bunch of shit up, and and then there's a whole other side of it where you can keep going with it, and it gets into art and shit like that, and and you get into guys like Chuck Sperry from Firehouse that have gone on to make a fine art career, and he's doing fucking low run screen print editions. He's doing weird materials like wood and shit like that. But I mean, from what I understand, Chuck's doing very well for himself. You know what I mean? And he was always really open about the technique in screen printing. Him and Chuck would go over to Europe and teach them how to, do screen printing and all that shit. So I mean, he has a massive following over there. Both of them did, and then Chuck kind of kept running with it and doing his fine art with it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. There's a lot, you can take it wherever you want to, how far you want to take it,
Oh, we were talking about tangible goods earlier when we were back at the shop. Uh-huh. And you were telling me about like sort of the way you go about referencing stuff. Because since you're doing something, you're representing something technical like a engine or motorcycle or something like that. You want to talk a little bit about how you wrap your mind around doing that?
Well, a lot of it, I mean, yeah, when you get into representational stuff like this, and you need to know how it's made up and whatnot. It's a technical thing, so if you don't got the car sitting in front of you, you're going to need photographs or what have you. You like to leave your mark on whatever you're doing, and hopefully it's filtered through and it has your touch or character to it. But ultimately, I mean, you really need to know. Aside from an aesthetic thing, there's components on like something, say a vehicle or a chopper or whatever, that serves a purpose. And if it's wrong, you get called out on it. This is a very unforgiving field in that respect. And that is appealing to me. And also, it's a double-edged sword. Yeah. I like that frankness of the audience. Right. They won't hold back whatsoever. Hey, that's cool and all, but bro, that fucking... the tie rod's fucking hitting the scrub line. What the fuck? You know what I mean? Or like, you can't do, there's no way that fucking chopper would be like blah, blah, blah. I mean, and that's, it keeps you on your toes. I think that's rad. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm sure to some that might be like a real letdown or be disheartening to have that such critical critiquing going on. But I think that shit's fucking important. And I think, a lot of people don't realize how important critiquing is and having someone point shit out. Yeah. I don't know, even in school I thought it was really, really important. And I had this one teacher, that was really good when I was over there at City College, that like she was really good at the analytical aspects of making art and critiquing your stuff, looking at it from all angles, and changing what needed to be changed. It's important to self-edit, and I think that's probably one of the things that changed a lot for me when I felt like it clicked. Yeah. I learned to self-edit and to go even further with something. It's one thing to do a drawing. Hey, that's cool. And I think most people would just stop at, hey, this is a cool drawing. I'm going to paint this. Well, go further. Really refine it. Really fucking, really, really fine-tune that golden turd, as opposed to it being a golden turd of like, yeah, well, it could be better here. And just really, again, self-editing and really, taking it to the next, really evolving it. And that's critical. That's a really critical aspect to doing art, I think. And a lot of people can't really have a hard time with that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And someone else saying something about their shit is just like would send them over the edge. I have never been really that married to it. You know what I mean? Like, it has that purpose. That's important. Yeah. It's important to know what the audience is thinking. Yeah. It can only make you better, man. Right. You know what I mean?
That's one frustrating thing with social media is that on things like Instagram or Facebook, where you're getting feedback from your audience, all you can either get is positive or ignored. Like, there's no. It always bothered me that you can't like politely dislike something or criticize something online.
That's an interesting observation, and I wouldn't be surprised if it hasn't happened, if someone steps up and does like an Instagram account that's just about the open and honest conversation of critique and like. And actually, I've seen this a little bit in the tattoo world. Tattoo Artist Magazine, they used to do this section of like, they'd present a scenario of drawing something, and they pick out like 4 or 5 dudes, and they all send in their version, and then the dudes would critique it, and that was fucking rad. That is rad. Really cool. Yeah. And in fact, I think Guy Aitchison, the 90s biomechanical genius, he's still around. He has I don't know, it's online, but he promotes it on Instagram. And it's about stuff like that. It's like the art of the cover up and shit like that, and they critique each other, and that's fucking important, man.
Yeah, that sounds great.
It's really it opens up a dialogue that's critical for a creative person to have, and to have that stance of being closed off to like how other people perceive your shit, or like actually taking a knock on what you've done and not being able to handle it. It's something you need to really work through, man.
Yeah.
You really got to have thick skin in this racket, dude. I mean, you get bent sometimes. You hear shit and you're like, eh. You know what I mean? Or you kick yourself, beat yourself up. I mean, I'm my own worst critic. I mean, frankly, I'll be honest with you, dude. I'm not a real big fan of a lot of the stuff I do.
Yeah.
Flat out. But you know what? I've noticed in my travels that a lot of guys that I really respect, they kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to be self-critical and like your own worst critic, because that's how you get better, I think.
Just imagine what a terrible person to deal with you'd be if you thought your stuff was like...
Yeah, well, I mean, but you come across those cats out there, man. They're like fucking, they got, everything's a golden turd, and it's just like, no, man, that's just not. No, I don't share that sentiment. I don't know. I've had some highlights. I think I've gotten close on some stuff, but a lot of times, man, I'm just a fucking frustrated artist. Is the next motherfucker? You know what I mean? It's a tough racket, but I can say I'm tenacious. I'm fucking stubborn. Being worked into a corner and feel like you've got no other options, that's a great fucking motivator. There's a lot of stuff like that, you know what I mean? And it all plays into it. But ultimately, you really got to constantly evaluate what you're doing and not rest on your laurels and shit. Unfortunately, it's what's your next big thing? What's your next project? You know what I mean? And it's really it's a grind, man. I tend to have a lot of projects going at once. You know what I mean? My thing, I figured out a while ago that it was like, it's best to have like fucking 24 things going on at once. It just is. You know what I mean? At any given time, I've got at least 12 paintings going. Some of them I haven't touched in almost a year. Some of them I fucking was working on it this morning. You know what I mean? And then you got design projects going, or you got this. I mean, you just gotta have a lot of stuff, because you never know what's going to be. What's going to sell, what's going to actually come to fruition and pay out. It's just it's a real dance, man. So I found the best bet is to just kind of fucking find out what works for you as far as diversification of projects, get a lot of them going, because you never know which one's going to actually finally pay out and come to fruition, and you can move on and, have a fucking dinner that night, or a beer. I don't know. You know what I mean? We got to be practical, dude. We got to fucking make money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And unfortunately, there's a romanticism about making art. And trust me, I have my moments. There's times, there's a zone I get into when I draw or if I'm painting or stuff. But the romance of it is kind of like, that kind of went out the window, dude. It's work, man. What do you do? But there's some magic that comes out of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to get lost in it. Right? There's a commitment there that I don't think some people are built to do. I don't think. It's immersive.
Yeah. It's
hard to say. I mean, the other thing that's funny, I don't think Robert Williams said it, dude. It was like, your best bet is to paint shit you like. Because odds on you're the only motherfucker that's going to want that fucking thing anyway. And, obviously I'm paraphrasing,
right.
But it probably wasn't too far off of that. But that's fucking important knowledge, I think. It's really, really critical. And it took a while to sink in, but it's something I really, really live by now, because it's really true, dude. Yeah. Like, you don't sell everything you fucking paint.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not, if you can get to that strata, man, hats off. But like, your best bet is to just like focus on shit that really twists your nipples, because, you're hedging your bets that there's other cats out there that are like-minded. But the other thing is if it don't move, at least, You got that out of your system, or it's something you enjoy looking at, or it's subject matter you like, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you know, me going out and doing abstract work, or fucking doing a sunset, or, you know, plein air painting. I just don't see that happening. You know what I mean? I don't know. I like a lot of visceral action in stuff I make. You know what I mean? That appeals to me.
Yeah. Do you have a name for your style?
No.
What do you call it? Like pop surrealism, or
that term's floated around. I don't really people. Frankly, I just let whoever dictates that shit run with it. I just kind of like custom culture with 2Ks is thrown around, and I'm fine with that. Whatever, lowbrow, fucking whatever. I don't know. I think I've settled in the fact that I'm just I consider myself an automotive artist or a hot rod artist, and there's some stuff that might even have a car in it, but I still think it's hot rod art because of the visceral action of it, the feeling I get from it. And some people don't understand that, but it's just my vibe, my own weird fucking take on it. But like Williams, again, like there's stuff that he does that has nothing to do with cars, but that's a goddamn hot rod aesthetic if I've ever seen one. It's a very visceral, it grabs your fucking eyeballs and rips them out of your head. And that's, for art to do that is a very unique thing. And I don't know about you, but I've sat in galleries, like when I first saw like Ron English's work, or fucking, even like the Piz or Franco or something. Man, when I was, or even fucking Wiesner. Yeah. When I was first standing in front of one of those originals, it was just like, it fucking twisted me up. Yeah. It fucked me up. You know what I mean? Because it's, wow. For a graphic guy, it's church to me. Yeah. It's a religious experience to me. You know what I mean? And it's no different than an old fucking car. There's a spiritual thing that happens with some of this shit that like transcends what it is, a form of transportation. It's fucking rolling art. You know what I mean? And it's just rad as shit. Until you experience that, until you sit in it and drive something like that, or like you're in a gallery and you're standing in front of it and staring at it, as opposed to like vicariously seeing it through digital media or a book or whatever, you know, magazines. To be standing in front of it is a whole different thing. And, you know, I'm amazed at sometimes people I've talked to over the years, you know, and most everyone that probably listening to this are like fans of like Robert Williams. I'm actually amazed at quite a few people that I've met that have never seen an original. And I've told them, I go, if you ever fucking get a chance, go fucking seek it out, because it will change your perception on what can be done with paint and canvas, and just how incredibly engaging that is. You know what I mean? And as an artist, that's what you want to achieve. I think you're trying to engage an audience. You're trying to get that unwavering attention. You know what I mean? That like you do something that someone can't not look at. It just appeals to them so much. You know what I mean? What more can you ask for? Something that hangs on a fucking wall. This stuff is it's not necessary stuff. I mean, people, you know, a fucking painting is one of the most unnecessary fucking things in life. How do you reconcile that? How do you get up every day and make fucking shit that people really don't have to fucking live? But there are people out there that kind of do. Yeah. I'm one of them. Yeah. You know what I mean? I went down that rabbit hole. I'm like one of those guys that has to have this crazy weird shit. We're sitting where we're doing this interview right now in a shop that's full of weird fucking crazy shit everywhere. And I like that. Like going into a tattoo shop, some people get fucking weirded out and vertigo, and like there's so much shit going on. I feel really at home there. Yeah, same here. And again, it goes back to like a religious experience to me. That's my kind of church. That's my kind of, and like the people that frequent that area, you know, the gray area, the fucking, you know, your ne'er-do-wells and your outlaw aspect. That shit is all very appealing to me. Yeah. It always has been. You know, the music shit and the punk rock aspect of it, and that stuff is all not lost on me. I really, it's like I'm a pig in mud. Yeah. This is like my element. I have friends that fucking you walk down the street with him and people cross the other back, years ago, back before it wasn't, this kind of stuff is more common now, but like, dudes that look like bikers and shit like that. It used to scare people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, these guys, dude, I would trust these dudes with my life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a weird dynamic there that like I really, really like that subculture, and I really believe this is a subculture. And a lot of this, people say, well, it's been co-opted and monetized and fucking this, that, and the other thing, and I still think the core fucking outlawness of it is still there. No. You can't fake that shit. And like, I still adhere to that. I just like that outsider element, that the grayness of it. It's it appeals to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? You hear that with the tattoo guys. That's lost that carny aspect of the outlaw aspect of it and all that stuff. And it's still there. You just got to fucking dig a little bit more for it and surround yourself with those people. And those are the kind of guys I like to hang out with, man. I have there's a shared commonality there, and like I said about going into tattoo shops, I fucking love going to those places. Are rad to me. I could sit in there all day and just stare at them. Sometimes I'll just sit there and draw. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's a fucking, you can, to me, I could just feel the walls vibrating. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm just a visual person. Yeah. Period. And I'm a twitchy guy. Like, I'm not real good about sitting around. Like, I like to sketch a lot, and I'll sit there and watch TV and sketch, and you know what I mean. Sometimes you can't turn this stuff off. Yeah.
Do you draw every day?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow. At the very least, I try to. Every once in a while, they might slip by and I won't. But like, even if it's just a fucking doodad, or even if it's just like, I'm fucking brain dead right now, but I feel like sketching, you just sketch a skull, but I mean, like, whatever. But I think it's really important to keep your hand trained, and and that's kind of stuff that I didn't really know about, first starting out. And you start getting around other artists and stuff, and to tattoo guys and stuff, and where you're guys that are making graphics, making imagery on a daily basis, and you understand that there's a visual language and like a dexterity thing of keeping your hand in the groove and shit like that. It's just I think there's a commonality across the board on a lot of different avenues that I guess would imagine the same thing with like a musician. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I love music, dude, but I have no musical aptitude, dude. I'm a professional audience. Yeah. But I couldn't imagine making art without music. Yeah. Love fucking all kinds of shit, weird shit, you name it. But I couldn't imagine like a musician. I mean, I'm sure they're plucking on a fucking guitar or doing something every day. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even if they're not thinking about it. It's just, you got to kind of get in where you fit in, and that's, and you do it, it's weird.
Well, I want to talk about the fruit sprayed art. I don't think we talked about that at all.
Oh, yeah, that was,
I'm looking at the skateboard deck in the background. That's what reminded me.
Well, that was the series for Anti-Hero skateboards, and that came out of that produce label show I had done the previous year. Yeah. And the produce label stuff came out of, I have a thing for labels in general, and it's actually kind of been my Achilles heel, because frankly, I mean, I like to work text into paintings, and it's just fucking, it's so laborious to do, and I try to get around it as much as I can, but for some reason, I think this might harken back to the proclivity towards stand-up comedy and humor and stuff. I like to interject words in the paintings. Yeah. The problem is it takes fucking forever for me to do text and stuff, because I get anal about it. And, some people look at it and go, man, you're really good at fucking blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at them and go, yeah, well, took me fucking forever. You know what I mean? But like, so I've tried to navigate away from that. But my point is I've always really liked labels. I used to do firecracker labels for a while. I've always liked firecrackers and the packaging on them and whatnot. And like, that kind of went dormant for a few years. And I kind of felt like taking a break somewhat from car shit, just kind of a moonlighting way, and I came across some produce label imagery at some fucking fair or what, I can't remember what it was, but it kind of just got me juiced on labels again. So I did like a produce label show and like big paintings, fictitious labels, but in that genre nonetheless. And it was a big enough gallery space. It was a fellow artist here downtown. She had a really rad space and called a bitchin' space. Gail Hart, actually, she's one of the artists that did some of the public art for the Golden One Center that just opened up. Cool. She did the hand and the darts and stuff. And in fact, I think a lot of the manufacturing of that happened in San Francisco. But anyway, she has a workspace. She still does to this day. She hasn't done shows as of lately, but she used to do shows periodically, a fellow artist, and I really liked the way she did her show. It's her bitchin' space. It's a warehouse kind of, and she really knows how to light shit. Mm-hmm. And it was just she knew what she was doing. I really liked the way she did her thing. The space was big enough, so I had my truck in the middle of the space, and we had like hay bales and shit in the back of the truck like it was a produce hauler or whatever. So it kind of completed the package. Frankly, that show was only up for like 4 days. One of the proudest shows I've ever done, frankly. And I don't whatever, I mean, I do shows whatever, but like I was really fond of that show. I liked aesthetically the way it looked. She lit it bitchin'. She's a cool chick. She had a fucking half pipe in the back courtyard area. So, I mean, cats are out there skating and shit. It's fucking cool. It was cool. Anyway, John Cardiel from Antihero had seen that show and hit me up. They had 6 writers on their team at the time. And he was like, what if I gave you, like, the name or, you know, where each writer was from, and you kind of just run with it and do it in that produce label vein. And I'm like, I got you. So, and the thing about skateboarding shit that I really like is it's a really, really, really fucking punk rock fucking arena of playing, because nothing is off the table. I think this audience will know that, like, you know, skateboard art over the last 30 years is just fucking mind-bending. Some of the shit. I mean, Jim Phillips from Santa Cruz, he's there with Williams to me. I mean, fucking untouchable and just bulletproof fucking designs that grabbed you by the fucking skull. But like, I guess what I'm getting at is nothing's off the table. There's nothing sacred. Yeah. You could do anything. And I fucking love that, dude. That was a fucking very appealing thing. So I did some comedic shit with those boards, and like, like all of them had like taglines on the tail. Like that one's walk and roll, and that one's sweet like a bullet. And basically those dudes, that's where they were from. That, Hewitt was from San Diego, and I forget who fucking Bandito was. Alan. He was from San Juan Capistrano, which I guess was the birthplace of Zorro, which is why that's that way. And then they're known for their orange groves there, and then like those archways, that Spanish archways, those are fucking everywhere. And so I kind of did a little research on each area where each writer was from, and kind of made humorous shit. And there's original paintings of those. Those paintings are at the house. I have them all still. I never sold them. They're like 1 foot by 4 foot. Proportionate to a skateboard. You shrink it down, it reproduce tight, whatever. So I produced those for that, and that went really well. It was just fun. Nothing was off the table. I mean, there were some drawings that were rather questionable, and they were wide open to it. They didn't give a shit, and that's rad, dude. That's like, you can get a gig, fucking. That's pretty cool, but. And dealing with Cardiel, and like, I knew a little bit about him, but I mean, like, dude, in that skateboarding world, he's like a fucking he's the dude.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, he was just this weird cat that showed up at my shop, fucking, kind of scraggling. He's kind of a scraggler dude, and like, but he was the fucking coolest dude to talk with, man. Like, and I dealt a little with like Caballero before, doing poster work with like reproducing Dirty Donnie. We've printed a few, probably a half dozen of Dirty Donnie posters. And when Cab was in the Road Zombies, he spearheaded a couple posters, and Donnie did the art, and we screen printed them and whatnot. So.
One of those.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that are really good. I was really fond of how those came out. But dealing with Cab, I mean, really neat. There's a lot of neat guys in skateboarding, and I've noticed that in hot rodding. There's a whole group of guys that all migrated out of skateboarding, in the rods and customs, and it's really rad because I loved skateboarding when I was a kid. So it's really, really cool to deal with these guys, and they're fucking neat guys. You know what I mean? Like, we got Ricky Windsor here in Sacramento, and he migrated out of skateboarding into custom cars, and his fucking aesthetic is rad, dude. I mean, he did shit in the 90s that, like, car guys around here, we all, like, it's still to this day is like fucking, it was rad as shit. He's just this fucking crazy fucker that modifies cars in his shop out behind his house, you know what I mean? But the skateboarding world's really fun to me. It's a really cool arena to do graphic. And the fact of the matter is, to have shit on a deck, on a skate deck that's going to get used, is a really, really neat thing. You know what I mean? And to see it all used up and scraped up, it's fucking cool. So I've done some stuff for some other outfits. Paisley Skates out of San Francisco, along with Steve-O at All Hail the Black Market, which was on a deck that I believe was shaped by Paul Schmidt. Had that project going on, and then this year the two decks I did for the imagery was initially done for shirts and wearables and whatnot, and that was for Doomsayers here in Sacramento. And Omar hit me up on that stuff, and I remember when he hit me with wanted to do those designs, the first thing out of my mouth was, "Were you gonna do decks?" I was just like, I'm always thinking about skateboarding. I think it's a cool medium. But they did eventually do the designs I did for him. Did eventually come out on skate decks, and like Omar, he was a rad dude to deal with. Fucking just a neat, creative guy with a lot of fucking energy, man. And like, it's cool to tap into that. You know what I mean? There's this new generation coming out, and they got some shit going on, man. And I remember when Omar came to me when I was still managing production over at the T-shirt shop, and he hadn't done Doomsayers yet. It was just his idea, and he came to me and he was like telling me all these convoluted shit he wanted, and I'm like, I remember if I remember correctly, I was neck deep in a lot of stuff for Asphalt Invitational, because we did all those show posters for all 5 of those shows, and when it was always around that time frame of that show, it was pretty much all hands on deck. I mean, because we did everything, like posters, stickers, shirts, fucking, it was an involved process. And like, he was hitting me up with this really goofy idea to me at the time, and I'm like, well, here's the deal, why don't you sketch down what you're thinking, so I kind of get a better idea of where you're coming from, and hit me up. And I never heard from the guy again. He was a young kid at the time, and I just never thought about it again. And then like, he got a hold of me, I don't know if it was on social media or something, and hit me up, and like, we start talking. He's like, "Hey, I'm that dude that came by the T-shirt," and I'm like, "You're the fucking guy," because I'd been seeing his name pop up all over town, and then like this Doomsayer shit. And what the fuck's this Doomsayer stuff? Like, they came out of nowhere. Like, and he like, when we start talking about this project, he's like, "Yeah, I'm that kid that came up and fucking before Doomsayers had started, and I was asking you about," because I think he was trying to come up with a logo for him or whatever. And I'm like, now I remember it now. Yeah, it was just funny. Just funny how he never forgot. He just had been busy starting the company, you know what I mean? But those guys are rad over there. They're really doing cool shit. I've been fortunate that they, for some reason, like my stuff and thought enough to seek me out about it, which is pretty cool, dude. And lately I've been doing stuff with Legend Skateboard, just to kind of that's a little more hands-on because he's actually manufacturing. He's like doing laminating and stuff like that. So it's like it's a whole different process. Of like, well, I can actually do some screen printing and then actually have it, end up being on decks and stuff like. So it's a little more. Getting even a little more entrenched, and having to make jigs and stuff for what materials we're working with and whatnot. And it's been fun. I mean. It's no different when I first figured out how to do stickers and like do elaborate multicolor stickers and stuff because I always loved stickers as a kid, and to be able to do those as an adult is a very, very cool thing to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? It fucking again, I'm a pig in mud about shit like that because I just always thought that shit was fucking the cat's meow when I was a kid, and I guess I'm one of those dudes that's where that stuff comes from. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Right? It appeals to the child in me. You got to keep your child, you know what I mean? Your perspective, that wonder, that inquisitiveness about things. It's really easy to get jaded as you get older, and it's like there comes to a point where you got to hedge your bets that like I think you need to retain some of that curiosity, that childlike wonder in life to do this kind of stuff because it's really important. I mean, it's funny. It's like a two-edged sword, like being self-critical and analyzing your stuff. And the other thing is it's important not to overanalyze. Yeah. You just got to do shit. You know what I mean? And you get into problems sometimes where you're like overthinking shit, and it's like a lot of this stuff is just a visceral gut punch thing. It's like you kind of figure out the best way of drawing or producing whatever you're going to do, but like do it in a way that's just like very direct, very visceral, just, you know what I mean? It's like, and not overthink it too much, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, it's not high art for sure, you know what I mean? It's for a certain audience. Yeah. And it's important to remember that, you know what I mean? I have no delusions of grandeur about being in like the Crocker Art Museum, which is like fucking 3 miles from here or whatever. Go there. We're members there. I love going into Crocker Art. They only got a couple, 3 references to, loosely reference to automotive art. Mm-hmm. I have no delusions of grandeur of that ever making its way into that institution, whatever. Yeah. Not the major priority for me. I don't know. I like being in the trenches. Here's the thing, man. You get a fucking car guy that likes your stuff and is willing to buy it, that says a lot to me. Yeah. The car guys are pretty meat and potato dudes. It's not like they're fucking got these fancy homes and they collect art and shit like that. Yeah. It says a lot if they fucking want to plop down their hard-earned cash for something that's going to hang on a wall.
Yeah. That's a really, really good way to look at that.
You know what I mean? That to me it carries more weight than some dillweed rich guy that fucking buys stuff on speculation, or it's because he's the hot artist and you got to fucking buy his shit, and and they got it at their vacation home, that piece, and it's maybe seen a couple times a year, and these are fucking real scenarios, Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I got my pieces in a couple of those collections, and it's like, whatever, that's cool. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that's not my primary focus. Yeah. And some would say you're shooting yourself in the foot because you really limited your audience or your collector base, if you will. But I like the fact that that's a tough audience. And if you get them to like your stuff, that's very gratifying to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. It's like musicians liking other musicians or whatever, you know what I mean?
Or like you were talking with stand-up comedy earlier. That's about like winning a room over,
Yeah, no, it's no...
Same challenge.
That's not an easy thing to do. And the guys that do it well, I think it's magical to watch. As far as, like in comedy, Bill Hicks, or who's an underappreciated, I think, stand-up comic. I think he was way ahead of his time. Or Sam Kinison, he gets relegated to being that loudmouth dude. But Sam Kinison, you go back and listen to some of his shit, and it was fucking rad, dude. Yeah. Some of his observations, and and then you got, whoever, fucking George Carlin. Yeah, fuck, dude. I mean, fuck. You know, and then you got fucking, you know, whatever, Eddie Murphy or fucking Richard Pryor or fucking, it's just, when that stuff clicks and it's hitting, man, I just, you know, it's a gut punch to me. I think I appreciate that perspective, those observations, you know. I don't know. But, yeah, we're bouncing around all over the place, man.
Yeah. Well, we're just under 2 hours. Was there anything else, upcoming stuff that you want to talk about?
I was thinking of Legend Skateboards. It's Corey Scholes is the guy behind that. But he's been fun to work with. He's really open about what he does, and we're kind of experimenting some stuff. So yeah, there's some stuff in the works with him. It should be interesting. And then actually, what's today? The 5th?
Yes.
Yeah. And so in 1 month,
remember.
1 month I'll be out in Wichita at Dennis McPhail's. This will be the second annual custom culture Christmas fucking thing that he puts on, but it's a pretty rad thing, dude. It's just something that he picks the artists, you know what I mean, and he's got a shop, warehouse space, if you will, behind his tattoo shop in Wichita, Kansas, Artists at Large Tattoo, and it's a pretty big space, and he you know, brings in tables and shit like that, and he brings in a couple dozen artists and has some pinstripers there, and it's pretty, you know, it's by and for the artists. It's a pretty rad thing, and they're really the Midwest people are really into it, dude. I mean, you get that enthusiasm that sometimes is fleeting out here and on the West Coast. We get jaded about this shit and fucking whatever, but Dennis is a rad dude, and it's a really rad show he puts on. It's a cool thing to jam out there, and it's amazing. I mean, just to do a day show. But the response is there, dude, you know. And as an artist, I mean, that's what you need, man. What you hope, you know. But that's another thing about, you know, I'm a fan of a lot of artists, you know what I mean? And if you get to meet them and, you know, some you become friends with, and it's a really rad thing to have a mutual respect for each other's work, you know what I mean? That's a really cool thing also. It's just not always the case. But when it does happen, it's a pretty cool thing. Making art, you're like on an island, dude. You're kind of on your own, I think. You know what I mean? I imagine maybe in LA or something, guys interact more. I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's nice periodically to connect with cats that do a similar shit, and that, like, you know, you guys have the same language. You know, making art is a visual language, and you got to speak the same speak. You know what I mean? And it's nice when you can connect with guys, other artists and stuff. You know, makes you feel like you're not alone, man. And God knows, dude, there's a shit ton of us out there now. That's for sure. It's exploded in the last few years. It's amazing to me, but it's you know, making art's a solitary endeavor. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not like you're in some bar and it's a big fucking party. You know. A lot of hours, you know, alone, listen to music, fucking. But yeah.
Right on. Unless there's anything else, I think we got it.
Crazy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. No, it was a pleasure. Glad we figured some stuff out.
Yeah. Well, all right. That's the end of the interview. Man, wasn't that great? Bruce was a really interesting guy. He had so much interesting stuff to say. I really hope we can meet up again and pick up the conversation later. So that's just about all I got. I did want to mention, man, this next weekend is Black Friday, and if you remember back in episode 0, that was when I recorded the first episode of the show. So we're coming up on our first year. Thank you guys so much for spreading the word, leaving positive reviews on iTunes, and letting people know the show exists. I have so much fun putting this together. It's one of my favorite things that I do right now. Thank you so much for the support. That's all I got for now. The 1-year anniversary episode is next, and I'm hoping to bring you guys something special. So stay tuned, and I'll see you then.